Today, on World AIDS Day, it is my great honor to bestow the 2021 National Leadership Recognition Award to Pose, to the creators, producers, cast, and all those who made Pose possible. For those of you that have watched Pose, you know the story. It's a story of discrimination, stigma, otherism, and prejudice. But most importantly, is it a story of community? It is a story of hope. It is a story of family. Each year, this award is bestowed upon an individual, organization, or community that has focused the light upon the AIDS crisis, either currently or in the past, ensuring that a story of resilience and hope continues. It is the stories of resilience and hope that really are the underpinning of the AIDS crisis that we must remember in the future. I think all of us know that the power of what Pose has done will change the minds and hearts of those today. So again, on behalf of the National AIDS Memorial, I want to congratulate everybody at Pose for a job well done in creating something that is truly powerful. We're also so honored to accept the panel that was created in memory of the character Pray Tell. This panel will live on within the collection and the archives of the AIDS Memorial Quilt. I am so honored to have with me today Gert McMullen, the mother of the quilt. As we know, through Pose, it is about family. Gert has cared for the 50,000 plus panels and her boys, just as the mothers in the houses of Pose did. So Gert, thank you for everything that you do.
You're welcome, thank you. Yes, I wanted to thank Pose, too, for sending us this panel. I'm a little jealous of the disco balls since I have them all around. But, and I wanted to thank the mothers, too, of the houses that bring in all the transgender people. I wanted to thank them for what they do. I also wanted to mention the panels that are behind us for the Tenderloin girls from San Francisco. These panels were made by Felicia Elizondo, who died about a year ago in San Francisco, and so we put them up to honor her also. Yeah, but thank you, Pose.
And again, on behalf of the National AIDS Memorial, we want to thank Pose for all the work that you've done in telling the stories and pulling the thread of the AIDS crisis of the 80s to a current generation. Your work will live on into the future and will inspire those that follow by telling the story of those lost. Thank you for all the work that you've done.
Yeah, thank you, Pose.
Hi, I'm Tony Bravo, arts and culture columnist with the San Francisco Chronicle, and welcome to Changing Hearts and Minds Through the Power of Pose, a World AIDS Day conversation as part of the National AIDS Memorial virtual observance. I am so pleased to be joined today by Stephen Canals, co-creator and executive producer of Pose. Hi, Stephen.
Hi, Tony.
Our Lady J, co-executive producer of Pose. Hi, Our Lady J.
Hi there.
And a man who needs no introduction, Billy Porter, the award-winning actor and cast member of Pose. Hi, Billy.
Hi.
Today, being here on World AIDS Day, as you are all being honored by the National AIDS Memorial with its National Leadership Awards, it just feels so fitting given the representation that this show gave to HIV-positive people that are not frequently seen on TV. I would love to know what getting this award means to each of you, to be recognized for this work, sharing the story of HIV/AIDS in such a powerful way.
I think that the work that we all collectively have done on Pose was done with pure intention. I think each and every one of us who joined this project and who pushed really hard for it to be made and for the story to be told, did it in an effort to share our history or herstory. We did it because we knew the importance of visibility for queer and trans people, for people living with HIV. And I think in many ways, though I've never used this term before, I think that we all as storytellers collectively are also historians and didn't want our narratives to be completely lost. And so to be honored in this way now is an affirmation that all of the hard work and the pushing and the effort that we all did, not only on our show, but that our community has been doing well before the HIV/AIDS crisis in the 80s, well before even Stonewall in 1969, that it wasn't all in vain, that it was done really for us to be here in our authentic selves, being fully who we were meant to be. So it means a great deal.
I love that you bring history into this. I feel like as LGBTQ people, we do not have the same access to our history sometimes that other communities have. And this was one of the things about the show that I think spoke to me and so many people, that we were finally seeing parts of our history in the mainstream of culture like never before.
Can I just speak to, what you said about access to our history? We live in America. The access to anybody's history that is not that of the white colonizers is all but absent. It's all of us. I just want to make it clear, right? It's not just LGBTQ plus people. It's anybody who's not of the white colonizing race. We have no access. We are in the middle of our government trying to make teaching history illegal. That's the country we live in, right at this very moment. I don't want to talk in circles about that anymore. We're all in the same boat. We are all in the same boat, and we are all fighting to find and discover our own history in a space that has skin in the game for us to not know it. I just wanted to say that.
One of the things that I can speak to of that as a trans person, and as someone I've been positive for almost 20 years now, and the moment that I found out I was positive, the shame was bigger than the health scare for me. It was, I had AIDS when I found out, and I had 200 T cells. I had opportunistic infections. I hadn't been tested in a year and a half, and I had a choice to live or die, and I had to go on medication to live. And in that moment, when I was going through all the psychological war of really coming to terms with, okay, this is just a disease. This isn't this huge stigmatized, awful end of your life thing, which I thought it was because the only images that I had seen of myself and the only stories that I had seen up to that point were coming from that place of, oh, these are the bad people. These are the folks that we can't give power to. These are the folks we can't give access to. And that took, I'm still working on it in therapy. It's still a profound, devastating loss that we all have, that we all share. And when bringing it onto the screen with Pose, it, for me, that first conversation that we had in the writer's room of how much do we want to talk about HIV/AIDS on this show? Where do we want to go with that? The fact that we got to make that decision together, and that we had the opportunity, and we gave each other the opportunity to tell our stories in a way that had never been told, has been incredibly healing. But also extremely alarming, knowing how many folks did not know this. The amount of messages that I got from young folks who had no idea what our own community had been through just a decade before they were born, 2 decades before they were born. It made me realize that this is still very much an active erasure. It's not inactive. It is very much active. And I hope that Pose created a little bit of a break in that foundation.
That leads perfectly into my next question. I would love to hear from each of you what types of reactions you've had from viewers, from fans of the show, about exactly that, how the show has tackled HIV/AIDS, and how the show really highlighted the profound activism of the era that's depicted.
I was in the middle of it. I came out in 85. We went straight to the front lines to fight for our lives. I learned how to be activated and engage. And it's the only thing I've ever known. So I have the history, I have all of it because I lived it. What I didn't quite understand is that, true to American form, when the antiretroviral drugs came out in 96, it was about the erasure of the story, which is true to the American form. You know, it was about this idea of everybody gets on board to act as if it never happened because we're the shining country on the hill. So nothing happens to us. We are squeaky clean. And I didn't really realize that that had happened until I started getting calls from friends of mine in my generation who said, oh, I never processed my grief. Oh, I got on the medication and I never processed the grief though. I never processed the trauma though. You know, it's like profound in the depth of where the healing can go if you can be grounded enough and brave enough to let it happen. You know, I knew when I got the call to audition for a Ryan Murphy show set in the ballroom community of the 1980s that there was going to be a healing in it for me. Not only was I going to get it, I knew I was going to get it, but I also knew that there was going to be a healing in it with whatever. There's a quote from Toni Morrison that's really profound to me that I want to read, and it says, you know, this is precisely the time when artists go to work. There's no time for despair, no place for self-pity, no need for silence, no room for fear. We speak, we write, we do language. That is how civilizations heal. I know that Pose has been a healing salve to a whole group of people that needed it, including myself. You know, I see that panel on the wall, and I remember the day that I went in to shoot Pray Tell's death scene. And I remember, you know, in 2007 when I got the HIV diagnosis, and, you know, I went through my shame because I was a part of the community that was supposed to know better, and this wasn't supposed to happen. And, you know, working for 4 years and 3 seasons on this show, I was able to get to a space of profound healing for myself in proxy, through the proxy of the character of Pray Tell. And Stephen directed that final episode, and I walked in that day and I said, this is the death of Pray Tell. Who, but it's the birth. It's the rebirth of Billy. And I'm sorry for all this emotion, but it really is that. It's that. I don't even know if cathartic is the word, but it's just, there's so much that's I don't have the words yet, or maybe I do have the words, I don't know, but the gratitude I have to be an artist. We are artists and we have a place to put all of this. You know, we have a place to put all of this trauma and to put all of this grief with an intention to help somebody else. Oh, how profound that is to me, and how healing that is to me. And I just feel so blessed and so thankful. I didn't expect it to go here, but it really is profound.
Thank you, Billy. Thank you for the openness in your performances on the show and for your openness in your life. Stephen, what type of reactions have you gotten from viewers and from fans over the 3 seasons around the topic of how Poe has dealt with HIV/AIDS and the LGBTQ community?
The response has been immense and profound, and as Billy noted, I think really, really healing. I knew that the stories that we were telling, and as Jay pointed out a moment ago, we made a very intentional choice as a room to say, we're going to go all the way there. We could have sort of like dipped our toe in it. And I credit actually Our Lady J for this because, she came in open-hearted right from the onset that the writer's room came together, and was very open about her experience as an HIV positive person. And I think that it really catalyzed all of us, the remainder of our writer's room, to say, we have a responsibility here, to really truly tell the story and to do that in a way that's authentic and accurate. And I knew that we made the right choice when we were filming, I think, the 2nd season at this point. And I had a young gay Black man approach me, probably no older than 22, say to me, watching Ricky and Damon go and get tested together inspired me and my boyfriend to go do the same. We've been together for a year and we never talked about our status. And so after watching that, we decided we were going to go and get tested together. And I thought, oh my goodness, that is the impact of the show. And if the show can inspire even just 2 viewers, then think about what the global impact could potentially be. And so, the experience of specifically thinking about the show and the way that it has honored the lives of those who are living with HIV and all the lives that we lost to HIV, it's been really profoundly moving, as Billy pointed out. I mean, it runs the gamut from me being on an airplane and talking to women who were like, listen, I was a nurse in New York, or I had so many friends who I lost, to individuals who themselves are living with HIV, and articulated exactly what Billy said, which is, I think I just put all of my feelings and shame away, and I didn't even realize I was carrying it. I didn't realize how deep that wound was until I watched the show, and it brought it all back up for me. And only now am I starting to wrestle with it and to heal from it. So it's been a really profound experience.
Our Lady J, I would love to hear what you heard from the trans community during the run of the show. Again, the representation, especially of trans women of color in Pose, was groundbreaking.
The majority of trans folks, well, there's the Hollywood trans folks, and then there's the audience. Folks who have been working in Hollywood, we've been fighting so hard for so long to make this happen. And we've had moments, brief opportunities, where we've been successful and we've come through. So my colleagues in Hollywood were just relieved, really relieved that this is happening. The folks who have reached out to me and experienced the show as an audience member, the young kids, it's so heartening that this is just part of their daily lives now. This is who they are, and they're having more and more representation. You know, I'm 43. Folks my age and older, it's bittersweet to know that this can happen. This could have happened 20 years ago. This could have happened 40 years ago, and it's just now happening. So it's a celebration of where we're going, but also a recognition of where we have not been. We've been told that if trans folks are on screen playing trans characters, that it won't be successful, people won't watch, it won't be good, we won't show up to work, we're not talented enough, there aren't enough of us. We've been told all of this over and over again. And we, once you're told that over and over, you begin to believe that. And so there's part of us, part of me, all of these years that has been patient because I have believed the lie. So Pose was really a breaking point where there's no more believing the lie. Like we've put it out there, and sadly, you know, Stephen, I know you've talked about this a bit. Like, was this a moment? Was this just a moment? Are we going to continue making art like Pose? Are we going to continue pressing for underrepresented communities to be seen on television? Or is this just a trend? You know, and I think that's one of the places that we're at right now, that we're all kind of, we're nervous right now. We're very nervous that this may have just been a trend. We're hoping it won't be. And I'm going to continue doing the work, and I know my colleagues in Hollywood are going to continue doing the work to make sure that's not the case.
What I have loved about watching and being a part of and being a beneficiary of the allyship of one Ryan Murphy is that for me, and in my experience working on this project, he literally has taught each and every one of us how to fish. That old saying, you know, teach me how to fish on my own. Don't tell me how to do it, but teach me how to fish, and I'll be able to feed myself for the rest of my life. For me and my experience, that's what working on this project has been. So, you know, the responsibility is in our hands to not let up, to hold the Hollywood feet and everybody else's feet to the fire, to make sure that we don't disappear, to make sure that we don't go nowhere. It's actually up to us to make sure that happens. I believe it's up to us. I believe it's up to me and you and you and you and all of us to make sure that we don't disappear. And I know with the three of us sitting here in this room, all the projects we have are projects that are about us not disappearing. So that gives me lots of hope. You know, that makes me feel empowered as an artist. You know, the work that I'm doing is fully rooted and based in continuing the conversation. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And bringing others in as well.
And bringing others
job.
in.
Teaching others how to fish, you know.
Yeah.
We've learned it. We've had people pass it on to us, and it is our responsibility to keep that going. And we're going to do it.
Yeah.
I just want to remind everyone that it takes an active mind to do that. And it takes a lot of nerve. You got to have nerve.
Yes, you do. It do take nerve.
I will be watching, and I will be continuing to write about these future projects about our community. Stephen, when did you know that you wanted to set a project in the world of ballroom in this era? It seems like such an extraordinarily rich part of our history to explore. And it actually surprised me when Pose initially came on that there hadn't been a project like this before, knowing just what a fantastically rich set of characters, set of people, and type of performance is around ballroom.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, 2004 is the first time that I ever saw Jenny Livingston's beautiful documentary, Paris is Burning. And I remember after screening it for the first time, immediately thinking, that would make a really wonderful television show. I cannot wait to watch that. Never in my wildest dreams did I ever think I would be the person to spearhead it. But cut to literally a decade later, 2014, I was enrolled in UCLA's MFA screenwriting program. And, you know, I did something that I learned in that decade that I worked as a college administrator, which is to assess the landscape. And so I assessed the television landscape and asked myself the really important question: who are we not seeing? Who isn't being centered? Whose story isn't being told? And so immediately I thought, well, I want to tell a story that is unapologetically queer and trans and centers Black and brown people. And I just thought, well, no one's done anything with this beautiful community that is the ballroom community. And so I just decided to situate the characters that I started creating in ballroom. But if I'm being really honest with you, never in my wildest dreams did I think that that show would get made. You know, I wrote that original draft, that original Pose pilot really for me was just a calling card. I wrote it as, you know, obviously with the intention of this is the kind of story I want to be seeing, but never actually thought it would get made. I thought this will be my calling card. This will get me into the industry. And then once I'm in, then I can push to tell more stories about our people, about our communities. And the communities that I have a commitment to, you know, and the reality is in the 2.5 years between writing that pilot and then selling it to Ryan Murphy and to FX, I had hundreds of people in the industry tell me this show has no value because you're never going to find an audience for it. I don't know what network a show like this lives on. I don't know, you know, who's going to show up to watch it. I mean, there was so many things going against it. And to be honest with you, throughout the process, I believed all of it because the reality is that Hollywood tells on itself. So if you turn on the television right now and you look at count them, over 500 pieces of original scripted content, where are you seeing us? You know, every year GLAAD puts out a report where we are on television. And the reality is, sure, there's been like small gains, but the truth is that it's abysmal. You know, our visibility, our stories are still really not being told. And so, you know, the truth is, like, I didn't have very high hopes or expectations. I'm still kind of shocked, to be quite honest with you, that we managed to make the show and that we had 3 seasons and that the show was as successful as it's been. You know, it's not just that the show means a lot, you know, to queer and trans people or to folks living with HIV. It's like, the reality is we've gotten this incredible recognition. You know, it's like Billy's sitting here as an Emmy award winning actor because of our show. You know, Our Lady J is an Emmy nominated writer and producer of our show. Like, that to me, that's big. That is incredible, because that kind of recognition for this show that had everything going against it is massive.
Billy, what did you think when you saw the pilot script? Was there a particular moment, a particular arc that you saw for Pray Tell in that first script that
we didn't have access to that? It don't work like that no more, because, you know, it's like, it's too easy to get leaked. So I didn't have any script to go off of. I didn't have any say, you know, coming into it. The character of Pray Tell didn't exist until I walked into the room. So when I walked into the room, that's when the work started. And then slowly, as we were working on things, you know, discussions were had. And that's how the character was built. But initially, I was just a person who was like, oh, we need to have him. Not just a person, but I was the person where it was like, we need to have him and we'll figure it out. And they did.
The truth is, Tony, is like, you cannot have, a supernova like Billy Porter be part of your cast and you're not using them to the greatest, to the best of their ability, and pushing them as a performer to do really incredible work. So the truth is, like, in that original pilot, there was an MC, and I think his name was Dion originally, and it was a small role. It wasn't anything big, but Billy comes into the room and suddenly it's like he just sucks all the air out of the room with this incredible performance, with this audition. We were like, what was that? And little does he know, but I think it's also in that first audition with Billy, he spoke as eloquently and as emotionally as he did a moment ago about his experience of survival in New York City, and so it was coming out of that we went back into the writer's room. Because when Billy auditioned, we already had written, I think, 2 episodes, and we had sort of broken the third. And then obviously Our Lady J and Janet Mock joined the writer's room along with Brad Falchuk. And so then we really started to shape the first season. But the truth is, like, he came in and he gave us all this raw material. And so once we went back into the room, it was really easy for us to say, this is where the character is going to go. This is where we want to push this narrative. I don't think we would have done that if we felt like Billy wasn't equipped with the tools, not just in terms of his lived experience, but also as a performer to reflect that back. It's similar to the experience we had with MJ as Blanca. It's like we were able to push these performers in the way that we did because we could see what they had. Like filming those, the truth is that we filmed the first 2 episodes of our first season kind of in a vacuum, and we didn't even know if we would be picked up to series. So we filmed them, and then we had to wait for FX to say, you can go and film the rest of the show. But there was enough while filming those first 2 episodes. We were able to get to know the actors and to see what they had, the incredible ability that they had as performers, that we were able to then go back into the writer's room and say, let's take their storyline here.
I have to say, in the first 2 episodes, the characters already seem so formed, so real. I would like to ask all 3 of you in general, how much the performers were allowed, encouraged to contribute things like biographical details for the different characters, possibly even suggest arcs or storylines for the individual characters in this. I think that's a great question for you to start with, Our Lady J.
Well, as the seasons went on, that dialogue between actors and producers and writers deepened more and more. So by the end, there was a constant discussion. And I know, for example, Billy in season 3, the church scene, Billy going back home, that was all from Billy's mind, and that was from Billy's experience and his heart and soul. So it was a huge part of it. There was, as far as improvisation goes, like on set, there wasn't an incredible amount of veering from the book. The ball scenes were hugely improvised.
I have to say they were improvising. People ask me a lot, you improvised a lot. And it's like, yeah, but the original text for all of those ballroom scenes always came in on point, always. Like there was always an extensive amount of material for me to then springboard off of and kind of put my own flavor in it. But the shape of those ballroom scenes were always there. The words were always there, and I do not consider myself a huge improv person. They created the template for me to be able to ad lib because it was so fleshed out when I got it. I just want to say that.
Thank you. Those scenes are hard.
They're
for
hard.
Me, those were the hardest scenes to write.
Those are hard.
Like we would often like toss the ball scenes like a hot potato to each other. Like, no,
We
you
sure
do it.
did.
No, I got this to do. You do this. Like
Yes.
none of us
I
wanted to
didn't
write
know
the ball
that.
scene.
I didn't know that part.
Oh yeah. By the third season, we were always like shot not on these ball scenes. They're so hard to write.
Yeah, they're hard.
They're hard.
They're hard. But it was, that's why I wanted to say, it's like, they always came in on point and allowed for me to be able to, I could go off because I was grounded in something real, you know?
We also have Jack Mizrahi on set.
Yes.
To thank for a lot of that. Who he was an incredible, not just consultant, but staff writer on our series. And he's the father of the House of Mizrahi and had so much input. And so those scenes wouldn't be what they were without Jack.
No.
They are such incredible scenes. They're musical numbers, they're dramatic scenes, there's fight choreography in some of them. They are, I think, part of what really made the show such appointment television for so many people, in addition to the incredible evolution of the characters and just seeing this community on TV. I have to ask about the plot line I'm sitting in front of right now, the creation of Pray Tell's panel for the AIDS quilt. What was it like writing those scenes? What was it like shooting those scenes? As someone who grew up here in San Francisco in the Bay Area, the quilt is something that I think many of us lived with, but I'm very aware that Pose may have been the introduction to the quilt for many people watching at home.
Well, as we went on through the seasons, the more historical facts that we brought in, it became more and more exciting. And to know that folks are going to learn about this and this will be a part of our history. I believe the quilt came from Ryan. That was Ryan's initial idea. Am I right, Stephen, in the making of this?
It's a little fuzzy in terms of like, I don't remember. I mean, I think like everything on our show, it was always someone would bring it up in the room and then everyone else kind of co-signed it. So it always felt like a group effort. I don't remember who was the original person though to say we should do the quilt.
We group write all of the episodes. So some of us would get the quilt scene in one episode and then some of us would get the quilt scene in another episode. As far as writing the individual scenes, there was always the hope in the character when you're entering the space, when you're inhabiting Pray Tell or Blanca. I, in that moment, did not want to die, and I was hoping that this quilt would never be finished as Pray Tell, in the hospital when Pray Tell's sick. But Pray Tell then insists, well, I have to leave a legacy if I am going to leave. If I'm going to look at reality, it is very possible that I'm going to die. So what do I do with that fact and how do I leave a legacy? So the quilt became an emblem of a marriage of facts of this is where we're at, this is where I am, this is what mortality is. How do I continue on? How do I leave an imprint beyond everything else that Pray Tell did? So it was really an act of hope in a way where Pray Tell was going to leave something beautiful that Pray Tell himself worked on, while at the same time dealing with this incredibly difficult reality of mortality.
Working on the series finale was deeply emotional for a multitude of reasons. And specifically when thinking about the scenes with the quilt, truth be told, I think I actually have more conversations with MJ Rodriguez, who played Blanca, about the quilt than I ever did with Billy, specifically because she and her character had to engage with it so much more. It was really kind of her responsibility in the series to complete it. And so I spent a lot of time talking to MJ about not just what the quote represented specifically for Pray Tell, but also the larger history and the meaning of it, because this isn't something that we were just creating fictionally for the show, but we know that the AIDS Memorial Quilt exists in the real world, and and has been around for quite some time, and all the work that Cleve and everyone involved have done. And so for me, it was just important to express through the episode the importance of the quilt, and make sure that that came through in every scene, that this wasn't just an arbitrary choice that we were doing narratively, but that it would have a much greater impact for the audience.
Billy, do you have anything you'd like to add about that plot line, about the creation of the panel?
Not really. I just think it was the natural order of things, the natural progression of things. That's what happened. So it's like, right. I just, having lived it, every plot point, every space that we went to, all of the different historical moments really rang true for me because I was there and they all existed. Everything existed. Even I remember the first hospital, singing sequence. There was a as a performer, there was a Broadway performer, there was an organization called Hearts and Voices who, it's like, you got a piano player, you got 3 cabaret singers, and you went around to the hospitals every Wednesday and sang in the rec room for everybody. It was a thing. So to be able to recreate that and, was really beautiful and healing.
Billy, speaking of real life and the creative process, I'd love to know about the creation of Pray Tell's MC presence and persona specifically. Did you look to any real life MCs or any people that you knew in creating the extraordinary vocal style, also the sartorial style of Pray Tell on the show in those ballroom scenes?
Well, first, let me speak to the sartorial side, which, when I went in for my first costume fitting with Lou Arick, and, she said, Ryan wants to make Pray Tell a fashion icon. And it was just really interesting, that word fashion icon. It's like, in my personal life, I was trying to figure out how to do that in my career, as it related to my own personal career. And I've always been a fashion person. So that felt right. As an actor, as a classically trained actor, I looked at the character of Pray Tell. I looked at his presence in the narrative, like in the puzzle. And I knew that the ball scenes were what were going to ground the series and bring all of the different groups of people to it. It was the hub that would bring the most people in. And then, it's like the Trojan horse of the show. It's like, get them in, and then we can smack them with the truth, but get them in first. So with that said, I also looked at the history of ballroom. I looked at the history of the culture and how this was going to be a show that put the focus and the contribution to culture back into the hands of the people that contributed. It was time for us to not be erased anymore. Madonna did not create Vogue. Period. God bless you. We love you for your allyship. We love you, but you didn't create Vogue and the voguing, and the world needs to know that now. So with understanding that that would be the power, that could possibly be the power of this show, I wanted to ground the emceeing in something that was like really real. And I pulled out my classical training chops. And I was like, I have to approach these moments as if I am a Shakespearean, as if if it's the most important Shakespearean, Greek, like it has to be grounded in something that is that large and that real, something that people naturally respond to, not even knowing. I didn't tell nobody I did that. And there are very few people who picked it up. But there have been a few who have picked it up and who said, Pray Tell feels very Shakespearean. It feels very important. I've heard it 3 or 4 times. And I'm like, thank you, because that's exactly what I was doing. Because those people, those MCs, when Paris is Burning came out, the culture doesn't even know it. The world doesn't even know it. When Ryan said, if you can get into the spirit of embodying one of the MCs, from Paris is Burning, we'll write something for you. I said, the whole world has been doing that. Since 1991, the whole world has been doing it. The language that these unknown people created in their own space and in their own world, they created it. Everybody on the planet talks like that now. Everybody on the planet talks like those men and women talked, and they don't get the credit. So I was trying to give them the credit. Y'all created this. So that's how I built it. And I think that's why people responded to it so well, was because they really did understand the importance, consciously or subconsciously. They really did understand, oh, this is real. This is not just reading people. This is not, it's important. It's a cultural thing that is important and that has driven, the culture. I just keep saying the culture. It's like, everybody wants to do it. Everybody wants to be a, ballroom MC. The whole internet culture is based on how people clap and clap back. It's all based on that history, y'all.
I love that you brought Shakespeare into this, because I think that Dominique Jackson's performance also is very Shakespearean in the way that both characters proclaim and are both grand and yet very grounded in the truth. Which I think would be a wonderful segue into just getting a few thoughts from each of you on a couple of the additional characters, in a couple of the other leading characters in the show. Billy, your relationship with Blanca, I think, is the heartbeat of the show for many people. I would love to hear Our Lady J, Billy, Stephen, from all of you about the creation of Blanca a little bit.
Well, you just said it. It is the heartbeat of the show. And it was really lovely because, I have known MJ since she was 19. We worked together when she was 19 years old in the revival of Rent. She played the character of Angel, and I was the associate director. And so, there was always, we came into this with an older brother, younger sibling type of energy already. When I came out of my final, callback or screen test or whatever you call it, she was out in the hallway waiting, and I was like, okay. Yes, this is going to be a great show because I'm going to get it and she's going to get it. And if they're smart, they'll put us together. And they're smart, and they did.
How about the character of Electra? Electra, correct me if I'm getting the order of the names wrong. Electra Abundance Evangelista Wintour.
I believe that is correct. I personally, well, I'm a dominatrix. I mean, everybody knows that. Like, I just have no patience for men, and I will let them know. So I was really happy that I got to express that in Electra, and get into that with her. But also, there were some of the more, the more personal aspects. I used to go to New York. I would take a Greyhound to New York into Port Authority, and I would, go to the club until the club closed, and then I would go to McDonald's and sleep at McDonald's, and then I would sleep in the park. That part of Electra's story came from a part of my past when I was struggling with housing and not knowing what to do in life, but also the determination, the fierce determination. Electra inspired that in me, and I feel like she became what we all want to be in that moment as entrepreneurs and as fierce and strong folks. And also, it was just really fun to write bitchy monologues for her, and I learned to write for meme culture for the first time. I actually, at monologue in season 2, when she's out in the Hamptons and she's reading to filth, the woman with the scrunchie. I took 2 days on that, and I just imagined it on coming up on Best of Grinder. And so I was like, I really want Best of Grinder to put this on their Instagram. And they did. And so that was success for me. So that's my 2 cents on Electra.
Mother, clear your throat. That is still a line that I think is thrown around a lot in the community in moments where people need to be read.
That was improvised on set. That was that line in there for the breath.
Mother, clear your throat.
Originally was.
All right, guys, I have to run off to my next meeting. I love you all. Thank you for having me.
Love you.
And I'll talk to you
Thank
all
you,
soon.
Billy.
Okay.
Fabulous. Bye.
Stephen, can you speak to the characters of Damon and Ricky? Damon's journey in the show was also just so heartfelt and heart-wrenching, especially the pilot episode.
Damon's story, especially in that first season, particularly in the pilot when he's kicked out of his house for being gay, was what I imagined would have happened to me had I come out. So, and by the time we actually made the show, like, I was already out in my personal life, and my family didn't have that reaction. But when I first conceived of Damon, which was many, many years before I ever actually wrote the pilot, that was my great fear, was that I would be rejected. And outside of that, I think the other thing that I poured into Damon was just that desire to be something greater than what the world deems you can. I understood that. Like, I grew up in housing projects in the Bronx in the 1980s, where we had no access, no resources. And, I just remember as a kid always feeling like this environment isn't right for me. Like, I was born in the wrong place and time. I'm not supposed to be here. And so I think Damon has a lot of that same energy. Damon is really ambitious, and he had a whole lot that he wanted to do with his life. And I loved Flashdance, so I, also poured all of that into Damon and his desire to be a dancer. And so that's Damon. And in terms of Ricky, truth be told, and this goes back to what I was saying about Billy and the performers, these incredible actors sort of giving us all of themselves and all this raw material. So Delon Bernstein, who plays Ricky, he came in for an audition for Damon. And he was great. Like, I thought he was really wonderful, but I think we wanted Damon to have a little more of a boyish quality, and Delon is, obviously he's so stunning. We were just like, he's beautiful. I don't know that he's fully, I don't know that he's Damon. But I'll never forget as he walked out of the audition room, I turned to Ryan and I said, Damon's gonna need a boyfriend. And so we went back to the page and I don't even know if I've ever told Dylan that story, but we literally were like, we should just create someone for, and so that's when we decided to create the character of Ricky and introduce him in the second episode. And I will say we had the same experience with the ladies on the show. So Haley Sahar, who plays Lulu, and then Angelica Love Ross, who played Candy, they both came into the room and auditioned for Blanca. And they were great. You know, we really loved them. And obviously we felt really strongly about MJ and MJ playing Blanca, but we loved Haley and Angelica so much, and we just didn't want to lose them. And so coming out of the audition, similarly, we went back to the page and we were like, we just need to create other characters so that we can have them be part of the show.
Before we move on to our final question, Our Lady J, can you speak about Candy's journey? Candy was a character whose fate represents a horrible reality of life and existence for trans women of color. The show is concluded. I don't think that I'm giving a spoiler by saying that she's killed in an act of anti-trans violence. Did you always know that that was going to be where Candy's journey ended? Can you talk about the process of bringing her there?
We did not always know. You know, it was, we really thought about it and debated and ultimately decided to go there because that's what happened to Venus Extravaganza. And we wanted to reflect the reality of that story on Pose. As far as the character that ended up meeting that fate, we knew Angelica. She's such a strong actor, and when she created Candy, you know, she really brought all of herself to that performance, and the character. We knew that we wanted to show her after her life a bit. We had talked about it. We didn't know that she would be in all 3 seasons appearing, but we knew that Angelica as a character would be able to deliver on that performance. So that is also a testament to her talent, and we wanted to make an episode of it and not just have it be a passing thought. And so it became really a vehicle for an Angelica Ross performance. But it was, a lot of people didn't like us for that. A lot of people were very mad at us that we did that. We heard it loud and clear from all of the Twitterverse.
I think that speaks to what a beautiful job Angelica did and the writers did in creating that character of Candy. The fact that it was a personal loss for some people.
It was, for all of us, really. We loved Candy, and that's the devastating reality. These women who are murdered disproportionately to any other sector of the population are loved, and they are human beings, and they are missed. They are somebody's daughter and sister, and I hope people realize that when they read the headlines, it's not just another name.
As we close today, are there any messages either of you would like to give the community on this World AIDS Day?
Thank you for watching Pose, first of all. I feel so blessed to have been able to have a piece to write so much of my own personal trauma onto, but also to have that witnessed by the world has been incredibly healing. To have people humanize and empathize with my personal story and the story of so many other people living with HIV/AIDS. And we hope that you'll continue on the legacy to make sure that this period in time is not forgotten, that those that we lost did not die in vain. And we hope that there's more content that will be created after this. So everyone, choose wisely when you choose your programming, and do the work to uphold others who in our community. One of the things that Billy, I was speaking on about like gay icons is why can't our gay icons be gay? Why do we keep assigning iconography to folks outside of our community? Let's uplift each other and remember our stories. And hopefully, the eradication of this disease will come from the eradication of the stigma surrounding it. And it all begins with that internal support in our community.
Stephen?
What's in my heart right now is just to say that, Pose is just one story, and there are so many other narratives and so many other histories to be told. And so I look forward to hearing all of those stories. The reality is that we have not found a cure for HIV. And we do need to continue to work to destigmatize all of the misinformation that abounds around what it means to be a person living with HIV. And so more than anything, like, know that you are loved and you deserve to be loved, and you also deserve to take up space unapologetically, period. And so I hope that, the show, as Billy noted earlier, and as Jay noted as well, I hope that the show is just a solve for that, that any person who comes into it feels that they are loved and that they are respected and can walk out in the world with their head held high.
You're not alone. Get tested. Undetectable is untransmittable, period.
Period.
Get on medication. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, an important message to end on. Stephen, Our Lady J, Billy, it's on behalf of the fans, I would like to say thank you for 3 incredible seasons. I can't wait to see the stories all 3 of you will be giving us in the coming years and decades. Thank you so much for participating in this event today. Thank you to the viewers watching at home, and thank you to the National AIDS Memorial for having this conversation today. Live,
Thank you.
work, pose.
Oh.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you.
Thank you.